The blood moon hung low over Blackmore Ridge, painting the sky in shades of deep red and silver. Every 10 years, the pack gathered beneath its light for the most sacred night in werewolf tradition, the night the Alpha King chose his queen. Elena Voss stood at the very back of the crowd, half hidden behind a stone pillar, wrapped in a plain gray cloak that did nothing to draw attention. She had not come to be seen. She had come because every member of the pack was required to attend, and refusing would bring shame to her already disgraced family name. Her grandfather had once been a respected elder, but a betrayal decades ago, one Elena had never fully understood, had stripped the Voss family of its honor. Since then, they had lived on the outskirts of pack life, tolerated but never embraced. Elena had grown up learning to make herself small, to speak softly, to never expect anything good to come her way. She was a healer, skilled with herbs and wounds, and that was the only reason anyone valued her at all. Tonight, thousands of wolves filled the ceremonial grounds. Torches lined the stone path leading to the central platform, where Alpha King Draven Ashcombe stood waiting. He was everything a king should be, tall, broad-shouldered, with sharp green eyes that missed nothing, and a presence that made even seasoned warriors lower their gazes. He had ruled Blackmore Ridge since he was 23, feared for his discipline, and respected for the peace he had brought to a land once torn by war between rival packs. But Draven had never taken a mate. For years, the council pressured him, reminding him that a king needed a queen, that the bloodline needed an heir, that stability required continuity. He always brushed them aside, focused instead on strengthening the pack's borders and trade routes. Tonight, however, tradition would not allow further delay. The ceremony demanded a choice, and the moon goddess herself was said to guide the king's eyes to the one meant for him. The daughters of the ruling bloodlines stood in a proud line at the front of the crowd, each dressed in fine silks, each trained since childhood for this very moment. Lady Seraphina, daughter of the Ashwood line, wore a confident smile, certain the king's gaze would land on her. Beside her stood Lady Priya of the Thornwood pack, and several others, all poised and ready. Elena watched from a distance, feeling nothing but quiet relief that she would never be considered. She had made peace with her place in the world long ago, or so she believed. The ceremony began. The pack elder, an old wolf named Barnaby, lifted his arms and spoke the ancient words calling upon the moon goddess to bless the gathering. The blood moon seemed to pulse brighter as he spoke, and a hush fell over the crowd. Draven stepped forward, his expression unreadable. He was meant to walk down the line of noble daughters and choose the one he would mark as his mate. Elena expected this to be quick, practical, perhaps even cold, given how little warmth the king ever showed in public. But something strange happened. As Draven walked, his steps faltered. His eyes, which should have settled on Seraphina or Priya, instead swept past them entirely. He paused, turned, and looked out into the crowd, toward the back, toward the shadows where the lesser-ranked wolves stood, toward Elena. A murmur rippled through the gathering. Elena felt her heart drop as the king's gaze locked onto hers. Surely he was looking at someone else. Surely this was a mistake. But he began walking, cutting through the crowd, wolves stepping aside in stunned silence as he made his way directly to her. "No," Elena whispered to herself, though no one could hear her over the growing murmurs. "This isn't right." Draven stopped before her, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his green eyes. Up close, he looked less like the untouchable king she had always imagined, and more like a man who was, in this moment, just as confused as everyone else. "You," he said, his voice low, meant only for her. "The goddess pulls me toward you." "There must be a mistake, Your Majesty," Elena said, taking a step back. "I am no one. My family." "I feel no mistake," Draven interrupted, and something flickered across his face, an intensity that frightened her more than any anger could have. He reached for her, intending to complete the marking bite that would bind her to him forever, in the eyes of the pack. Elena's mind raced. This was the moment every noble daughter had trained for her whole life, the moment that would make her queen, elevate her family, grant her power beyond anything she had ever known. Any reasonable wolf would have bowed her head and accepted. But Elena was not thinking about power. She was thinking about every time Draven had walked past her in the pack halls without so much as a glance. Every time she had healed a wound on a warrior returning from patrol, and the king had thanked everyone else in the room except her. She thought about the whispers that followed her family everywhere, whispers Draven had never once tried to silence, even though a king's word could have ended the gossip in a single sentence. She thought about being chosen not because he saw her, truly saw her, but because some divine pull decided for him in an instant. "No," Elena said, and this time her voice carried, clear and firm, echoing across the silent grounds. Draven froze, his hand still outstretched. "What did you say?" "I said no." Elena lifted her chin, refusing to let her fear show. "I refuse the mark." The reaction was immediate. Gasps spread through the crowd like wildfire. Lady Seraphina's confident smile twisted into something between shock and satisfaction. The elders exchanged horrified glances. No one, in the entire history of Blackmore Ridge, had ever refused an Alpha King's mark. It was unthinkable, dangerous even, an insult that could carry severe consequences. Draven's expression darkened, his jaw tightening. "You dare refuse me? In front of the entire pack?" "I dare," Elena said, though her hands trembled at her sides. "You have never spoken to me in my life, Your Majesty. You do not know my name. You do not know my family's history beyond the rumors others have told you. And now, because some force beyond either of our control pulled your gaze toward me, I am simply expected to accept being claimed like a prize? I will not be chosen out of impulse, only to be forgotten the moment the ceremony ends." The crowd held its breath. Draven's fists clenched, and for a moment, Elena feared she had gone too far, that she had signed her family's fate with her own foolish pride, but she did not look away. "You dishonor the goddess's will," Draven said through gritted teeth. "Then let the goddess herself judge me," Elena replied. "I only speak the truth." A tense silence stretched between them, thick enough to choke on. Elena's mother, somewhere in the crowd, had gone pale with terror. Her father gripped her mother's hand, both of them bracing for the king's wrath. But then something happened that no one, not even the eldest wolves who had lived through 100 blood moon ceremonies, had ever witnessed. The ceremonial fire at the center of the platform, which had burned a steady orange all evening, suddenly flared upward in a brilliant flash of silver-blue light. The flames twisted unnaturally, rising far higher than any normal fire should, and a voice, ancient, resonant, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, rolled across the grounds. "The heart that speaks truth, even before a king, is the heart worthy of a crown." Every wolf present dropped to their knees, overwhelmed by the presence of something far greater than themselves. Elena stumbled backward, her breath catching in her throat, as the silver-blue light wrapped around her like a gentle embrace, warm and impossibly soft. "Elena Voss," the voice continued, and hearing her own name spoken by the moon goddess herself sent a shiver through every fiber of her being. "You are chosen not for your bloodline, nor for the king's momentary impulse, but for the strength of your spirit and the honesty of your heart. You shall be queen of Blackmore Ridge, chosen by my hand, and none shall question this decree." The light faded as quickly as it had appeared, leaving the ceremonial fire burning calmly once more, as though nothing extraordinary had happened at all. But everyone had seen it. Everyone had heard it. Elena stood frozen, her mind struggling to process what had just occurred. Around her, the pack remained kneeling, heads bowed, including Lady Seraphina and Lady Priya, whose earlier confidence had completely drained from their faces. Draven rose slowly from where he, too, had knelt. He looked at Elena with an expression she had never seen on him before. Not arrogance, not command, but something closer to wonder, and perhaps even shame. He walked toward her again, but this time his steps were careful, measured, without the entitlement he had carried moments earlier. When he reached her, he did not extend his hand toward her neck to complete the mark. Instead, he lowered himself to one knee before her, in full view of the entire pack. "I have been king of this land for many years," Draven said, his voice carrying across the silent grounds. "And in that time, I have made countless decisions, believing that my position gave me the right to demand, rather than to ask. Tonight, I was wrong. I looked at you as a solution to a problem, not as a person deserving of respect. I never took the time to learn your name, your history, or your heart. The goddess has shown me what I failed to see on my own." He paused, glancing up at her with an unfamiliar vulnerability in his eyes. "I do not ask for your mark tonight, Elena Voss. I ask instead for the chance to earn your trust, as a man, rather than as a king, demanding what he believes belongs to him." The crowd remained utterly silent, watching the exchange unfold. Elena felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming weight of a moment she never could have imagined. All her life, she had been told she was less important, less worthy, less deserving, and now, both a king and a goddess had shown her otherwise. "I have spent my whole life believing I did not matter," Elena said quietly, though her voice carried in the stillness. "Tonight has shown me that perhaps I was wrong to believe that. If you are willing to earn my trust honestly, Your Majesty, then I am willing to give you the chance to do so." A collective breath seemed to release across the grounds. Draven rose to his feet, and for the first time, something like a genuine smile touched his face, softening the sharp lines that usually marked his expression. The following days brought changes no one in Blackmore Ridge could have predicted. Draven made a point of visiting Elena not as a king summoning a subject, but as someone genuinely seeking to understand her. He asked about her work as a healer, listened to stories about her family's history, and for the first time in years, publicly acknowledged the unfair treatment the Voss family had endured, working to restore their standing within the pack. Elena, in turn, found herself slowly letting go of the walls she had built around her heart. She saw glimpses of a man beneath the crown, someone who had shouldered the weight of leadership alone for far too long, who had forgotten what it meant to simply connect with another person without the burden of duty attached. Weeks later, beneath a calm and gentle moon, Draven asked Elena once more if she would accept his mark. Not as a king demanding a queen, but as a man who had come to genuinely care for her. This time, Elena did not hesitate. The marking ceremony that followed was nothing like the chaotic blood moon night that had first brought them together. It was quiet, intimate, witnessed only by close family and a few trusted members of the pack. When Draven's mark finally joined with hers, Elena felt not fear or obligation, but a warmth that told her she had made the right choice, in her own time, on her own terms. The pack that had once dismissed her now looked to her with genuine respect, not because a goddess had declared her worthy, though that certainly played its part, but because they had watched her stand firm in her convictions, even when the entire kingdom expected her to simply obey. Elena Voss became Queen of Blackmore Ridge, not through impulse or tradition, but through her own courage to demand to be truly seen. And Draven Ashcombe became a better king, having learned that true partnership could never be built on command alone, but must always be earned through patience, humility, and respect. Together, they led Blackmore Ridge into an era remembered not for the king's strength alone, but for the queen who had once dared to refuse him, and in doing so, taught an entire kingdom what it truly meant to choose with an honest heart.